Welcome back, everyone. As you probably guessed from the title of the video as well as the thumbnail, this is the firearm that we are going over today. This is the Glock 19X MOS, and this is the second newest, at least as of when I'm recording anyway, a Glock model that has been released. I'm recording this in September, late September 2024. So as of right now, it's a relatively new Glock out there on the market. These have actually been very hard to come by. Essentially, they're making them in small batches, and when they make them, they sell out like within a week of hitting store shelves. So very, very popular gun, and I do think there's good reason for it. We're gonna try to walk you through that today. So basically, what the heck is it? Well, it's the Glock 19X, which if you guys don't know, this is at least the original version of this, was the result of the Army's MHS program, which was their modular handgun program, which eventually was won by the folks over at Sig Sauer with their M17 and M18. Now, Glock introduced a version of this gun for the Army's trials. However, many folks criticize Glock, and myself would be among them, for not exactly meeting the specs that the Army was looking for in terms of modularity. And ultimately, the gun was not selected, and of course, the SIG was. One of the big factors, of course, being that the SIG is modular, this one isn't. Additionally, SIG came in with a pretty attractive price point for the actual program, and that definitely had something to do with it as well. However, there was a lot of folks out there that thought this gun, at least the base model of this, should have been the one that won the trials. I suppose that is a video for another day. Eventually, I will have all of the models that went in for consideration, and maybe we'll do a video on it. But this one here is the modernized version of it. So the one that went in for the Army trials didn't have the threaded barrel. It didn't have the optics cut. This one, of course, does. And the gun is sort of an in-between gun. So a lot of folks are familiar with the Glock 17, one of the, if not the most popular full-size handguns ever produced, at least since the 80s anyway. And if you take a look at it here, essentially what we have is a shorter slide. So you have your 19 length slide, but then we do have our full size frame on there. So it has the same size frame. So the standard capacity on this one is going to be either a 19 round magazine that you see there or a 17 round flush fit magazine. And then of course you have less slide mass coming back and reciprocating while you are firing it. For me, that's something I call a mullet gun. So it's, party in the back, business in the front. And additionally, when these guns came out with the shorter slides and the longer frames, I thought they were kind of dumb because typically most people, the part they're trying to hide for concealed carry anyway, is going to be the frame. But once I actually started shooting these guns, and there's a number of them on the market right now, I realized that I did like these a lot because I get full grip with my hands. I have relatively large hands, and like I just mentioned, you have less reciprocating mass coming back and forth under firing, so the recoil impulse is just a little bit more pleasant. It tracks a little bit better. And I suppose before we get into the actual details on the pistol itself, what is my relationship with Glock? I have absolutely no relationship with Glock at all in any way. They don't talk to me. I don't talk to them. It kind of is what it is. They don't like that I criticize their sights. However, this gun actually has the best sights, I would say, for a factory Glock anyway. We've upgraded them since then. But regardless, I have no relationship with Glock at all, and I bought this one with my own money out of pocket. But we do have a sponsor today that helps offset those costs, and that is the Boss Lock. And what exactly is the Boss Lock? Well, it is this guy right here. It is a device that allows you to store your handgun in a ready configuration, but still be inaccessible to those who you don't want to have access to it. Kids, neighbors, whatever the case may be. Essentially, you just mount it up here on your pistol. It fits a number of different pistols. It has a USB-C rechargeable battery port there. Also has a 1913 rail there on the bottom, so you can add a light laser, etc. however you want to. We have a snap cap here, and essentially, you just keep your pistol in the ready configuration. As soon as you go to use it, you put your finger on the pad right there. And it really is that quick. As soon as you put your fingerprint on there, it sends the slide home. It's in battery. At this point, you can use the weapon however you want to. And it's just a very easy way to keep your pistol in a safe configuration, but still in a ready access mode, if that makes sense. There are a number of different fingerprints that you can program into there. You can actually delete fingerprints as well. So if there's somebody you don't want to have access anymore, you can do that as well. And that's pretty much it. Very simple solution that does work for folks who are interested in that. So big thanks to the folks over at Boss Lock. Now let's continue on. Getting back into the firearm itself, I suppose we will start here with the bottom and work our way up. So like we mentioned, it does come with a 19 round as well as a 17 round standard capacity magazine. However, there's something a little bit different going on with these magazines, and that has to do actually with our magazine well. So one of the things that came over from the MHS program was this lanyard loop requirement. So it does have that lanyard loop on there, and then it has a little bit of a cutout there on the the mag well. Now the mag well is actually flared more than most Glocks as well, which certainly is nice. That does help with inserting your magazines. If you are a little bit off, it helps you kind of like aid it in there, if you will, kind of like that, which is nice. However, one of the downsides of this is that the Gen 5 magazines for your Glock, Glock 17, Glock 34, etc., with their new base pad right there with that lip on it, they will not seat in this gun. So just know that going forward. Any of your Gen 3s, any of your Gen 4s will all work in there. Of course, any of the 19Xs will work in there, and any of your standard capacity extended length ones will also work in there as well. Just know that is a restriction of the 19X, and some folks don't like that. If that is you, that is just fine. It doesn't bother me at all, but it is something to know when you're considering which pistol to pick up if you're going to pick one up. Now, the grip texture on this one is the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 grip texture, if I could speak. Very good. It sticks to your hands. It's not super abrasive though, so that way if you're carrying it inside the waistband, it's not going to abrade your skin, or if you're carrying it like in a duty rig or something like that and it's rubbing against your car seat or something like that, it's not going to scratch that up too bad either. This one, of course, does have the interchangeable back straps on there. With the original backstrap, i.e. no backstrap added, as it comes from the factory, the grip circumference is a little bit shorter. It's 2 millimeters shorter than it would be on, say, a Gen 3 Glock 17. So it's a little bit smaller. So that way, if you have small hands, it helps you get a better grip on it. However, myself, like we intimated earlier, I have a little bit larger hands. So we put that large backstrap on there with the beaver tail. And for me, what that does is it gives me more room to fill in there and get a better purchase there with my support hand on the gun itself. Grip texture, of course, is standard Glock. So if you don't like Glock in terms of the orientation when you actually present out, then that's probably just not for you. A lot of folks, particularly in America, are more used to like the 1911 or the Smith & Wesson M&P grip angle. The Glock is a little bit more aggressive than that. I tend to like it because I grew up on Glocks, but I do realize that especially nowadays as I'm getting older and there's a lot of more competitive options out there, a lot of folks didn't grow up with Glocks. So if that's not the case, you may not like it. It's definitely something to consider there. The actual magazine release there is bigger than the Gen 3s. It's about the same size as the Gen 4, and with your 19X models, it has that rounded profile on there, a little bit different than some of the other Gen 5s on there. That was part of the MHS program as well. It does work both ways. You'll see there on your magazine, it is cut for ambidextrous use. So it's very simple to swap out. It is not ambidextrous, but it is swappable. So that way, if you are left-handed and you want to activate it with your thumb, very easy to just switch it out to the other side if that is something you are into. Speaking of ambidextrous, the slide lock and slide release lever is ambidextrous and it works on both sides. It is subdued in terms of how far it sticks out. Many of you guys who watched my early Gen 5 Glock videos will know that I was a big opponent of this. The early ones that came out, they were flared out to the side a ton. And what would happen is when I was firing with my 2 thumbs high grip, I would end up accidentally hitting that and getting false slide lock. Well, turns out I wasn't alone. There was a lot of people that were complaining about that, and Glock made a rolling change to their slide lock and slide release lever. Now they are very close into the actual pistol, very similar to the Gen 3 and Gen 4 Glocks. So it's a little bit more difficult than some competitive offerings to actually hit. However, it's small enough that you're not going to accidentally hit it, if that makes sense. So pros and cons. I know a lot of folks out there just prefer to run the slide. If that is you, then you don't have to worry about it in any way. So there is that. Continuing on up, we do have a little bit of an undercut there on the trigger guard itself. However, it is not what some folks would like. So a lot of folks out there will take a Dremel tool to that and undercut it a little bit more. It helps it be a little bit more comfortable on your knuckle. Now, again, I've been shooting Glocks for so long that I don't notice it. However, if I'm out there taking like a 2 or 3 day class, eventually I will start to notice it. It starts to abrade on my knuckle. So just know that. Pros and cons like anything else, but the Dremel tool is your friend if you want to actually fix that. It is doable. Trigger guard is a moderate size, so there certainly are larger ones. There are smaller ones as well. Some folks who live in like really cold climates, that is one of the complaints about this gun, is that the trigger guard isn't quite so large. So that way, if you have a glove in there, you don't have a ton of room in there to actually manipulate that trigger. That said, it's not a huge deal to me because I don't really go out in Arctic conditions, but some of you guys do. So just keep that in mind. Continuing out to the front of the trigger guard, we do have serrations out there on the front for people who like to shoot with their finger out front to get a little bit more leverage. I don't do that, but there are championship level shooters that do that, so I'm not someone to tell you whether or not that is good or bad. Continuing out front, we do have our 1913 rail insert on there. Now, that is important. That's one thing that's a little bit different with this gun than some of the Glocks out there. Some Glocks have a Glock-specific rail insert. This one has a 1913 rail insert. It only has one, so just know that you don't get a ton of different positions for mounting your lights, lasers, etc. That said, most of your standard ones will work just fine. Your Surefire X300s, your Streamlight TLR1s, etc. They will all mount on there just fine. And one thing that is nice about this one is it doesn't have a pig nose. So some of you guys who are new to Glocks may not know what that is, but a lot of the older Glocks had a curve up on the frame that would actually touch the slide. For some reason, some people hated that. I never really cared either way, but it is something to note that they do seem to have fixed that with the 19X MOS. Now, continuing on to the slide itself, you guys can see it has that nice coyote color there. A lot of people do like it, and one thing I like about it is that the actual inside of the slide doesn't have that same finish on there. I realize that may sound a little bit strange to some folks out there, but if you are putting colored slides, particularly if it's Cerakote, and you're doing the inside as well, sometimes that can cause issues with reliability. On this gun, they did not do the inside with that color scheme, so that certainly is nice. But the finish there, I've had zero issues with it at all. There's no rust or anything like that on there, which I do like. Some of the Glocks have had issues with that, particularly some of the early Gen 4s had issues with rust when they changed from the old Tenefer finish to whatever their newest finish is. But this one is holding up just fine, and we've had it out in salt air conditions and had no issues there at all. There are no forward slide serrations. Some folks don't like that. I personally typically don't use them, particularly if you have an optic on there, but that is something to consider if you are into front serrations. If you're into that and you want something similar, take a look at the Glock 45. Very similar, a couple differences. Maybe that'll be a video for another day as well. Continuing back there to the rear, talk about these sights. So the gun itself actually comes with Ameriglow lower 1/3 co-witness steel sights. Shocking, I know. If you guys have watched this channel for any length of time, you will know I've been very critical of Glock's polymer sights. I don't think they should ever release them to the market. That should be embarrassing, particularly given the price point of these guns. But Glock listened, and they put on this particular gun some Ameriglow blacked out sights, which I have no problem with. I would have zero issues using them, particularly if you have an optic mounted. On this one here, we have the Swamp Fox Kraken, and this gun does come with a RMR plate. It didn't come with any others. So some of the Glock MOSs will come with like a plate combination that has like 4 or 5 plates in it. This one didn't. It only came with an RMR pattern plate. That said, Glock MOS plates are kind of ubiquitous and you can get them pretty much anywhere, but it does suck that if you have something that isn't RMR pattern that you have to go out and buy one. Just know that the Swamp Fox did come with the MOS plate, but not all of your optics are going to do that. Getting onto these sights here, these are from Tag Precision. They're interesting sights that has a square notch there on the rear. They are, of course, lower 1/3 with the optic as well, so you do get that co-witness capability. Good serrations there on the rear. They are, of course, steel, which certainly is nice for sights. And then, of course, we have the fiber optic up front. What's kind of cool about the fiber optics on this one is that if you, for whatever reason, break your fiber optic, which can happen over time, there's actually a little screw out front, and you can actually just put another one in. They come with a number of different backups, I think 6 or 7 if I remember correctly. We've not had to replace this one at all, so seems pretty durable so far, but eventually most fiber optics will break and yeet off your gun. So if that is the case, you can just back the screw out, put a new one in, screw it down, and you're back in business. There's a couple features of the gun that we haven't talked about so far. Number one is going to be that threaded barrel, and then additionally the trigger. The trigger on the gun, pretty straightforward. It is a standard Gen 5 Glock trigger, so it has our safety there, so that way if you pull on the outside of the trigger there and you don't activate that trigger safety, there is no way that trigger will go home. Additionally, Glock does have a firing pin safety, so that way if you drop these guns, there's virtually a zero risk that the gun is going to fire. So it is a very safe pistol overall, although it does not have an external thumb safety. Pros and cons to that, whether or not you guys want that, that's up to you. Me personally, I do not, and I think the Glock is a very safe system. The trigger pull is nothing to write home about at all. Basically, you're just going to prep, you're going to hit some mush, and then you're going to hit the roll on the mush, and then you're going to finally hit your wall. Brakes right at 5.5 pounds, and the reset is excellent. and then right there, you're back on the wall. So the Glock trigger is not bad. The Gen 5 Glock trigger is better than the early ones. It's still not as good as a lot of competitive options though. So, you know, if you're talking about like your Walther PDPs, your CZ P10Cs, your Smith & Wesson M&P with the new Performance Center triggers, those are all better triggers than this for sure. That said, I've often said, and I stand by, if you can't shoot a Glock trigger well, that's probably a you problem and not a trigger problem. It's not bad, it's predictable, which certainly is good. It's just not super crisp, if that makes sense. But the 5 pound, 5.5 pound pull weight is something a lot of folks like for duty use, for home defense use. So I'm not mad about it. Now moving on to the threaded barrel. Actually, before we do that, let's thank the main channel sponsor, and that of course is going to be the folks over at Brownells. Obviously, if you're in the market for optics, this firearm, if it is actually in stock, which it rarely is, the sites, any type of gunsmithing supplies, Brownells is a place that you definitely should check out. Great prices over there, great people as well. Ask anybody in the industry, they pretty much will all tell you the same thing about the folks at Brownells. Additionally, we need to talk about Mug Club, because this is going to be a Mug Club episode. Like I said, as of when I'm filming this, it's late September, getting into the presidential election, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden just put forward an executive action against guns. And we're going to be talking about that in detail over on Mug Club, what it means for you and what it means going forward should those people continue their power grab, if you will. So if you guys are interested in Mug Club, it's not just myself creating content over there. I make one video a week, but there's other creators over there as well. And there should be a code here on your screen that will get you guys a free month of Mug Club over there. If you guys are interested, check that out. So continuing back, talking about that threaded barrel, it does come with a thread protector on there. It is threaded 1/2 by 28, and this does have the Glock marksman barrel in there. So traditional Glocks had the polygonal or polygonal, depending on how you pronounce it, rifling in there. The Gen 5s have kind of a hybrid of traditional polygonal rifling with button rifling, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'll roll in a photo here that will help you guys understand what it looks like in there, but they claim it gives you better accuracy. Now, ever since the late Gen 3s and then the early Gen 4s, I've found Glocks have very good accuracy. So I've not seen a difference with the Gen 5 marksman barrel over, say, like a Gen 4 Glock like this one here. Both of them are extremely accurate in my opinion, so I've had no issues with that. But one thing that I have said many times, if you guys have watched the channel for a while, is that the Glock system overall, which of course is a modified Browning system with the barrel that drops down like that and tilts. That system is traditionally not the most reliable pistol to suppress. So a lot of folks view this threaded barrel as just something that you can attach a compensator or whatever muzzle device that you want to on there. But me, I look at it as a suppressor host, because I look at a gun like this for potential home defense use. So we ran this gun with the Resilient suppressor on there, their 9mm suppressor, for about 400 rounds, which is kind of insane. Most of that was 124 grain Minuteman munitions. Some of it was 147 grain Minuteman munitions. Some of it was 115 grain Stellar and Bellet jacketed hollow point ammunition. It had 0 malfunctions of any kind. That is highly abnormal. Again, I've tested a number of Glocks. I've tested a number of Glocks with factory threaded barrels. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the spring number that this one comes with their dual captive spring. I have no idea, but this gun runs suppressed extremely well. So I do like that. No complaints from me on that one. Additionally, I think I mentioned it has a 1/2 by 28 thread pitch on there. Traditionally, your Glock threaded barrels have not had that. They've had the weirdo European 13mm thread pitch. And the 1/2 by 28 is very good, because that's what most compensators, which a lot of people in America do like to run, and suppressors here in America do work with. So that thread pitch is excellent. Another thing we need to talk about, of course, is going to be reliability. We just talked about it with suppressors, 100% reliable with suppressors. We ran another 400 rounds through it, unsuppressed, 0 malfunctions of any kind. The overwhelming majority, again, was Minuteman Munitions, which is our 9mm ammo sponsor. So big thanks to them for sending out the fuel for this review. So I've had 0 malfunctions out of this gun at all through all of the rounds we put through it. And if you guys have watched recently, that hasn't really been the case with, I think, the last 2 Glocks that I reviewed, the 47 and then the 21, excuse me, the 34 and then the 21. Both of those had multiple malfunctions, which is kind of unusual for Glocks. Glad to see Glock coming in strong with this 19X MOS. Again, 0 malfunctions of any kind at all with the gun. So reliability was phenomenal, exactly what you'd expect from a Glock. If you're buying a Glock, that's one of the reasons you're buying it, right? Is for that proven reliability and durability. Got some S&B 115 grain hollow points in there. We shall see. Ate him just fine. Speaking of buying it, how much does this thing cost? It's probably the second most expensive Glock out there on the market. Generally speaking, it's going to be somewhere between $625 and $700 as of when I'm recording this video. Of course, if you guys are watching this 5 years down the road, that price may have changed. But for a Glock, that is a very expensive gun, and it has a lot of competitors in that price point. You know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Glock really was the king of the hill, if you will, for duty-rated polymer framed striker-fired guns. These days, they're probably still the #1 in terms of total pistol sales, but there are a number of competitors coming in on that market. The M&P, the Walthers, the CZs, the Canics, I'm sure I'm leaving some out, the HKs. There's a ton of them coming for it, and pretty much all of those, with the exception of the HK, are going to be less expensive and, generally speaking, more feature-packed. So whether or not you want to go with the Glock, with all of the, I guess, downsides of a Glock, like the weird grip angle, the MOS plate system, etc. But also you get the benefits of the Glock, which is like universal parts availability, magazine compatibility. There's a lot of pros to the Glock, as well as a super proven system. Whether or not that's up to you guys, if you want to choose that for that price point, I'll leave that to you guys to discuss down below in the comment section. But one thing I will say is this: in my experience, sample size of 1 is a phenomenal gun. If it is something that fits what you're looking for, I definitely would recommend it. And I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions about it, anything like that, you can post those down below in the comment section. If you guys are new here and you like this type of video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We do 2 videos, sometimes up to 4 a week, pretty religiously every week here on the channel. So if you're not seeing them in your feed and you are subscribed, there is an algorithm censoring your eyes from my content. Easy way to get around that is to sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month, and it has all the videos since the previous month's email went out. So that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Additionally, we have a daily deals email. If there's deals on Glock magazines, Glock itself, optics, ammunition, etc., it will go out in the daily deals email. It goes out every day, as the name would indicate. It has 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet. If the item, whatever it is in the email on that particular day, it's the cheapest that I know of for that item, because I've already done the price comparison and searched around and verified that it is the cheapest. So that way, hopefully it saves you guys some time and saves you some money as well. You can sign up for that at the website here on your screen. People love it. Daily Deals email is fire. If you guys are subscribed to the Daily Deals email, let everybody know what you think of it down below. The reviews speak for themselves. Lastly, we do have an SMS service. So it goes out once a day, just one text message. Typically, it's the best deal that we find around the internet on a given day. Sometimes it's new video as well that just went up that is pressing, has some current issues, things like that. But regardless, it is not spammy at all. Once a day at most. You can sign up for that SMS service at the website here on your screen, mrgunsandgear.com/SMS. There's a lot of contests and stuff like that that we run there as well. So definitely check that out. And with that, that's pretty much all I have for you. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you over on Mug Club.